Hello, this is Chris Bertelson with a quick clip from Nevada Learning Series. Let's take a look at what's new with the file formats in Microsoft Office 2010. What's new is a new Office file format that Microsoft introduced in 2007. It's the same format they use in 2010. Now, this new format is optional, but most people are going to it because it has several advantages. For one thing, the files tend to be a lot smaller, on average about 50% smaller than before. You're also less likely to lose data if you happen to have a corrupted file. If you have macros attached to files, they tend to run a lot safer. And there's a lot of new features that only work in this new file format, such as the new Office themes, or a new equation editor, or SmartArt. Now, how do you know if you have one of these new files? Well, the new files we're talking about here are in Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. And if you look at the file name, the last three letters of that behind the dot tell you if it's a new file or an old file. If it said DOC, that's the old version of Word. If it says DOCX, that's the new version, or M for macro or T for template. If it says XLSX, that's the new version of Excel. PPTX would be the new version of PowerPoint. Now, the first question people ask me about the file format change is, can I open all the old files that I've used for years in the new program? And the answer to that is, of course. Here we have an old file called Old World with a DOC extension, the old version of Word, and we can open that up in Word 2010 and it works just fine. In fact, there's a list of all the old file formats that we can read from and write to. Now, when you open one of these old files, it puts it in what's called compatibility mode. And it says that up at the top, and what that means is they've turned off some of the advanced features that wouldn't work in an earlier version of Word. It prevents you from accidentally adding something that might break compatibility. If I go to Insert and want to insert this new equation editor, that's grayed out. I can't do that. In fact, if I hover over that, a little tip pops up to tell me why that's been turned off. That saves one call to the help desk right there. If I want to add SmartArt, it tells me that this is a limited function here. If I insist, it will put in a diagram from the old diagram gallery that would be compatible with earlier versions of Word. If I work on the file and go to save it, I say File, Save, and it'll automatically save it back into the old file format that it came from. So basically, compatibility mode keeps you from shooting yourself in the foot. You won't break compatibility thanks to that. People ask me, should I convert all my old files into the new file format? And I say, well, only if you want to add some new features that just work in the new version. Otherwise, just let those sleeping dogs lie. You can open them, edit them, save them, print them, and they work just fine. Now, if you do want to add some new features, then you need to convert it, but that's pretty simple. You go backstage with the File button. We go to the Info tab, and you can see a conversion button right there. You click on that, you have a little conversion ceremony, and then you've got the new file format. You can start adding those new features right away. So we can see that the old files can come up into the new, and that works very well. What else could happen? Well, what if you have a new file and you want to save it down into the old file format? You want to give it to somebody with an older version of Word. Well, here we have a new file, a DOCX file, and it's got some new features like the equation editor that we have there and SmartArt that we have here. And I'm going to save this down to a DOC file format. So I say File, I say Save and Send. And under File Types, I say I want to change my file type. Over here on the right, we can see a list of the different file types that we have. By default, it'll save to the new file format, but we choose to save to the DOC format. We say Save As, and we give it a name. And then it runs a compatibility checker to check and see if anything's going to break when we downgrade this. And you can see here that it says, well, the equations in the SmartArt will still look nice, they'll still print, but you won't be able to edit those in the older version. Well, maybe that's not a big deal, but it sure is nice to be forewarned about it up front. So if I need to make changes, I can make those sooner than later. So we've seen that we can take the old file and open it in the new program, and here we've seen that we can take the new file and save it down to the old file so that we could open that with the old program. What else could come up? Well, what if you're sitting there with an old version of Word and somebody gives you one of these new docx files? You think, I can't open that. You can't get there from here. But think again. Here we are in the old version of Word. You remember it with all of its wonderful toolbars. And we're going to open up a new file, one of these docx files. When we hit the open button, you might expect an error or a crash. But instead, we get a dialog box that says this file was made in a newer version of Word. It's been converted to a format that you can work with. Now, when I first saw this, I thought, wait a minute, how can old software even know there's a new file out there? But it turns out, if you've done the updates that Microsoft sends out for Office, one of those updates was a free compatibility update that allows you to open new versions of Word, Excel, and PowerPoint with the old versions of the program. That's what we have here. So we can say OK, and we can open up that file just fine. Now, if it ends up that you don't have this compatibility update, you will get a link to Microsoft's website where you can go download that update and install it on your system. So we can open this new file with the old program, we can look at it, we can edit it, make changes. In the case of Word, when we go to save it, we say File Save, and it's going to save it right back into the new file format that it came from. So to recap, there's a new file format in Office. It's optional, but it has several advantages, such as smaller file size and using some of the new features that are in Office. You know you have this new file format if there's a 4-letter extension on your file name, such as docx for Word or xlsx for Excel. You have the ability to open old files in the new program, work with them, and save them back in that format. You can also take new files, such as this one here, and save it down to the old file format for maximum compatibility in sharing your files. You can do this both in Word, Excel, and PowerPoint. Microsoft has done a great job in integrating these file format changes into the program. For the most part, it is transparent and out of sight. And that's what's new with file formats in Microsoft Office 2010. This has been a quick clip from Nevada Learning Series, helping you get the most out of Microsoft Office.